Banana Island, Lagos. 6:02 a.m., the polished marble floors of Khalifa Group headquarters sparkled under the soft glare of recessed lights. Every line, every corner, and every inch of the glassy structure reflected power. The building was a crown jewel of Banana Island, Nigeria's most exclusive neighborhood, home to dignitaries, celebrities, and untouchable wealth. But at this quiet hour, before the rush of executives in tailored suits and Louboutin heels, only one figure moved through the cavernous lobby, a man in faded navy blue overalls, pushing a mop in slow, deliberate strokes. Vincent Khalifa, billionaire, CEO of Khalifa Group Holdings, son of the legendary oil magnate turned tech tycoon, was a man known across Africa for his brilliance and brutality. Headlines called him the Silent Storm. Investors worshipped him. Enemies feared him. And yet here he was, masquerading as a cleaner named Mr. Bello, disguised beneath a dusty cap and worn-out sneakers. He didn't look like power. Not today. He looked like every other invisible man society walked past. And that was the point. 3 months earlier, Vincent had ended an engagement with the glamorous daughter of a prominent senator. It had started out sweet, glitzy dates, red carpet galas, lavish declarations of love, but ended in betrayal. She didn't love him. She loved the empire he represented. When Vincent discovered she had sold confidential data to a rival firm, he called off the wedding and withdrew from the world. But that heartbreak did something more. It cracked him open. He began to ask deeper questions. Could he ever be loved for who he truly was? Not Vincent Khalifa the billionaire, not the CEO, just a man, a human being. And so he devised a test, a disguise, a dive into the lowest rung of his own empire. He created a fake identity with the help of his lifelong friend and personal assistant, Zainab Bello, together. They fabricated a background. Khalifa Group hired Mr. Bello, a new cleaner transferred from a third-party service in Surulere. The staff barely noticed his arrival. And the ones who did? They noticed for all the wrong reasons. His first week on the job was a lesson in humility and cruelty. Vincent's usual presence in the building used to command silence, tension, and straightened ties. But now, in his ill-fitting uniform and torn sneakers, people treated him like a moving dustbin. Mrs. Adu, the imposing head of finance, had thrown her empty Starbucks cup at his feet on Monday. "Pick that up, boy, and be quick about it." Lola, the receptionist who once flirted with Vincent at a shareholders event, now didn't even look up when he walked past. "Ugh," she muttered once when he accidentally leaned the mop bucket too close to her pedicure. "Can't you stay in your lane?" Tunde, a junior analyst with oversized confidence, went further. Every afternoon, he made it a habit to toss his takeaway wrappers on the floor near Vincent, just to watch him scramble. "You missed a spot, Bello. You planning to clean with your face?" Vincent bore it all in silence. He scribbled notes in a hidden journal he kept tucked inside his maintenance locker. Every name, every insult, every moment of arrogance that money had enabled. And yet, he wasn't angry. He was fascinated. The social experiment was working. People's true selves were shining through, and most of them were stained with entitlement. One late evening, as Vincent cleaned the boardroom after a long investor meeting, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirrored walls. He barely recognized the man staring back. The fitted agbadas, diamond watches, and custom Ferragamo shoes were gone, replaced by cheap canvas sneakers, bleach-stained gloves, and calloused fingers. But in those tired brown eyes, he saw something deeper. He saw clarity. For the first time in years, Vincent felt grounded, human, undistracted by money or press. But just as the loneliness threatened to creep in again, the elevator dinged. He looked up. She stepped out. A woman in a yellow and teal Ankara blouse and sleek black trousers walked across the lobby holding a stack of folders. She was tall, maybe 5'9", with smooth brown skin and natural curls piled high in a puff. Her stride was graceful, not rushed like the others, not arrogant like the managers. She stopped in front of the elevator control panel, then turned and noticed him. Her eyes lingered. Vincent lowered his head quickly. wiping at a spot on the floor that didn't need cleaning. And yet she didn't look away. She watched him for a beat longer and then, unexpectedly, smiled. Vincent blinked. She nodded once. "Good evening." His throat felt dry. No one had spoken to him with kindness in days. "Evening, Ma." "Don't call me that," she said, still smiling. "I'm Rose." And with that, she was gone, disappearing into the hallway with a scent of hibiscus perfume and something warmer, sincerity. For the first time in days, Vincent straightened up and smiled faintly. Her name is Rose, he thought, and she just might be the beginning of something real. Banana Island, Lagos, 7:15 p.m. Rose Ease didn't believe in fairy tales. At 28, life had taught her that happy endings rarely came wrapped in roses. They came with calloused hands, late nights in over-air-conditioned offices, and secondhand dreams. But even in her realism, she'd kept one belief tucked quietly in her heart. Kindness mattered. As she climbed the sleek staircase back to her office on the third floor of Khalifa Group Holdings, she replayed the moment with the cleaner, Mr. Bello, she thought he said. Something about him had tugged at her. Not pity. No, it was his silence, the way his eyes darted downward, like a man trying to disappear. She'd seen that look before, in the mirror during her first week here, when her supervisor barked at her for breathing too loud during a meeting. Vincent, still wearing his disguise and pushing his cleaning cart through the lower wing of the building, paused at a hallway window. His fingers gripped the metal rail tightly as he watched a group of interns laughing in the courtyard below. They had no idea he owned the building, that he built the internship program, that every line of code they studied was once scribbled by his hand. He had everything, yet here he was no one, just Mr. Bello. Earlier that afternoon, things had taken an ugly turn. Vincent had been scrubbing the executive restroom near the strategy suite when Mirabelle, head of HR, waltzed in, stilettos clicking like gunshots. "You missed a spot," she said flatly, pointing at a corner already gleaming. Before he could reply, she added, "You people never do anything properly. Do you even clean with disinfectant or just vibes?" He wanted to say something, just one word, but Zainab's voice echoed in his head. "Remember, you're here to observe, not to prove." So he bit his tongue, nodded once, and dipped the mop again. When she left, her perfume lingered longer than her decency. Rose, meanwhile, had returned to her desk with aching feet and tired eyes. The company's legal department was small, 4 lawyers and 1 assistant. She was the assistant, which meant she did everything: prepare briefings, update compliance reports, fetch coffee, and occasionally cover for her boss's mistress during awkward phone calls. But she didn't complain. Her mother always said, "Even if you're just a candle in the dark, shine anyhow." So she did. And tonight, as she sipped lukewarm tea from her chipped mug, her mind drifted again to Mr. Bello. She remembered how he flinched slightly when she spoke to him, like he wasn't used to being addressed like a person. That bothered her. She had worked enough odd jobs during university, receptionist, hostess, even part-time housekeeper, to know how deeply people could wound others with just a tone of voice. The wealthy liked to pretend they were invisible, but that invisibility had weight. Downstairs, Vincent finished his last shift of the day. He checked out at the security desk, where Julius, the night guard, barely looked at him. "Sign and go, beg," Julius muttered. Vincent signed. No one said goodnight. As he stepped into the evening air, the humidity of Lagos wrapped around him like a second skin. His private car was parked blocks away, where no one would notice it. He walked in silence, backpack slung over one shoulder. When he finally reached the car, he opened the back door, took off his cap, and leaned back against the seat. Zainab was waiting in the driver's seat. "Rough day?" she asked. Vincent gave a dry laugh. "They're getting more creative. I think someone spit in the mop bucket today." Zainab winced. "Do you want to stop?" He shook his head. "No. I need this. I need to see everything. Feel it." She studied him for a moment. "And, have you found what you're looking for?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out the tinted window at the glowing skyscraper behind them. I met someone today, he said finally. Zainab turned in her seat, eyebrows raised. A woman? Her name is Rose. Back in the office, Rose shut down her system and tidied her desk. The floor was nearly empty now. Most had gone home to their gated mansions and chauffeurs. She took the staff elevator down and stepped into the lobby. Mr. Bello was gone. But the floor near the entry sparkled like glass. Every corner was wiped. Even the plant pots had been dusted. She smiled softly. Oh, some people did more with less, gave more without being asked. Rose had always noticed those people, because she was one of them. That night, as Rose lay in bed in her small but tidy apartment in Lekki Phase 1, the generator humming softly in the background, she scrolled through her phone. A notification popped up. Top 10 Nigerian billionaires who keep a low profile. She tapped on the article, only half interested. Third on the list, Vincent Khalifa. No social media, rarely seen, known for avoiding publicity. There was a photo of him at a charity gala, suited in deep blue, his expression unreadable. She studied it briefly, then closed the article. Nice suit, she thought. But it was the quiet janitor with tired eyes that lingered in her thoughts before she fell asleep. Khalifa Towers, 6:30 p.m., Thursday. The building shimmered under the fading glow of dusk, glass panels turning gold as Lagos's evening lights flickered to life. Inside the towering headquarters of Khalifa Group, most of the staff had trickled out, leaving behind silence, broken only by the hum of the central air conditioning and the soft shuffle of a cleaner's mop. Vincent Khalifa, once feared in boardrooms, now quietly wiped down the chrome edges of the executive lounge table. His overalls were damp from hours of work, and a soft ache tugged at his lower back, but none of that mattered. Not after today. Because today, Rose had smiled at him again. Twice. And something about the way she said his name, Mr. Bello, made it sound less like an alias and more like a real person. Like he was real. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the shadow pulling strings. Just a man she didn't overlook. He had almost told her the truth. Almost. But something held him back. Earlier that day, 12:45 p.m., it had started with a malfunction. The espresso machine in the staff cafe had exploded in a puff of smoke and scalding steam, causing panic. Most employees rushed out, fanning themselves and shouting over one another. Vincent, stationed nearby with his cleaning trolley, stepped in instinctively, unplugging the machine and grabbing wet towels to cool the counter. He didn't even think, just acted. "Bello, are you insane? You could have been electrocuted," someone yelled. But before he could answer, Rose appeared, gently placing her hand on his arm. "Are you all right?" she asked, concern in her eyes. He nodded slowly, the heat of her touch grounding him. Her fingers lingered, just for a second longer than necessary. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. He shrugged. "Someone had to." She tilted her head. "You're always doing more than your job, aren't you?" He smiled faintly. "Just trying to help." She watched him for a moment, her gaze steady and unreadable. Then she did something unexpected. She pulled a chair from the corner and sat down beside him. "Sit with me for 5 minutes," she said. Vincent hesitated, unsure whether it was a trick, but her smile said otherwise. And so, for 5 quiet minutes in a half-empty cafe, the billionaire in hiding sat beside a woman who had no idea she was talking to one of the most powerful men in Lagos. They spoke about simple things. Her favorite suya spot in Yaba, how her mother made the best jollof rice with goat meat, her little nephew who danced like his life depended on it, her dream of starting a mobile legal aid service for single mothers who couldn't afford lawyers. Vincent said little about himself, keeping the details vague. "I used to work with wood," he lied, "and tech once, but cleaning pays the bills for now." She didn't judge. She didn't ask for more. And it was that silence, that easy, non-demanding acceptance, that chipped away at his defenses. For the first time in years, Vincent wasn't being asked to perform. He was simply being seen. Later that evening, after his shift, Vincent stood on the rooftop of the building, where only high-level executives had access. But with his fingerprints still in the system, the scanner had blinked green as always. He leaned against the steel railing, the city stretching out before him in a glowing sprawl of headlights, water reflections, and traffic noise. Somewhere below, Rose was probably walking to the BRT station or waiting for a bolt. He imagined riding next to her in a Danfo, laughing at nothing, eating roadside puff-puff and speaking in pidgin without shame. What would she say if she knew? If he told her the truth, would she pull away like the others? Would the warmth in her eyes turn into wide-eyed shock, or worse, calculated interest? He didn't know, and that uncertainty terrified him. Meanwhile, across town in a modest flat in Lekyphase, one Rose stirred a pot of okra soup while humming along to Asa's Bibanki, playing from her Bluetooth speaker. Her feet were sore, her eyes heavy, but her heart was light. Something about today felt different. Maybe it was a small moment of connection in the cafe. Maybe it was the way Mr. Bello looked at her, like he hadn't been looked at kindly in years. He's so gentle, she thought, so quiet. Like a man used to hiding in corners where no one's watching. She didn't know his story, but she wanted to. She wanted to know why he always looked like he carried a storm in his chest but never let it out. Why he never raised his voice. Why he wiped surfaces like they'd betrayed him. And most of all, why her heart beat faster every time their eyes met. Back in Banana Island, Vincent sat inside his car as Zainab handed him his phone. "You've got 27 missed calls," she said. "Board is panicking. Your mother's threatening to call in a priest." He chuckled. "Tell them I'm still on retreat." Zainab hesitated. "Vincent, this thing with Rose, you're playing with fire." "I know. If she finds out you lied..." "I'm not lying. I'm just hiding the truth." Zainab gave him a long, pointed look. "Which is exactly the same thing, boss." As the car pulled away from the gates of Khalifa Towers, Vincent stared out the window, thoughts full of brown eyes and hibiscus perfume. He had built empires. He had conquered markets. But nothing terrified him more than the way Rose made him feel. Seen. And feelings could not be disguised forever. Friday, 7:45 a.m., Khalifa Towers. The sound of Rose's low heels echoed across the marble floor as she walked into the building, balancing a paper bag in her oversized work tote. The lobby bustled with employees chatting in quick Yoruba, flipping through reports, and rushing toward elevators with coffee in hand. But Rose wasn't in a hurry today. She had been thinking about him all morning. About Mr. Bello. The way he'd unplugged that faulty espresso machine with no thought for his own safety. The way he listened, not to reply but to hear her. It was rare in this place, this kingdom of status and silent power, to find someone who made you feel seen. She stopped near the janitor's supply closet and knocked lightly. No answer. She smiled and placed the paper bag on a stack of cleaning cloths nearby. Inside it was a wrapped breakfast of yam and egg sauce. A peace offering? No, just a thank you. No one had ever made her feel safer in this cold, towering office. Upstairs, Vincent had been pulled into a scheduled orientation meeting, one of the few times all cleaning staff were called into a training hall. Dressed in his usual uniform, he sat in the back row of the old conference room and tried not to doze off while a middle-aged supervisor droned on about chemical safety and approved solvents. He'd barely slept. The dreams were getting stronger. Rose's laugh, her softness, the way her eyes didn't flick to his name tag or his shoes before deciding what he was worth. She looked into him, straight through the walls he spent years building. But the longer this went on, the harder it became to keep the two versions of himself separate. CEO Vincent Khalifa could sign off billionaire deals in silence. But Mr. Bello, he was falling apart over a woman who gave him a bottle of Zobo and a plate of yam. Rapriso. Later that afternoon, Vincent resumed his cleaning duties near the legal department. He kept hoping she would appear, but hours passed and she didn't. He'd nearly given up when he turned into the third-floor corridor and saw her standing at the window, her head tilted slightly toward the glass, sunlight casting a halo around her curls. She looked deep in thought, her arms folded, her brow gently creased. He hesitated. Should he walk by? Should he speak? Before he could decide, she turned and saw him. "Mr. Bello," she said warmly, "I was just thinking about you." His throat went dry. "I hope that's a good thing," he said quietly. "Come," she waved him closer. "You have a minute?" He nodded and approached slowly, every step strangely heavier than usual. They stood together by the window, overlooking the courtyard below. Children from a nearby school were touring the campus grounds, led by a few PR staff. "See them?" Rose said softly. "They don't care how rich anyone is. They're just curious, just present." Vincent looked down at the laughing children chasing each other under the trees. Their innocence pulled something raw in his chest. "You ever wish you could be that free again?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "All the time." She glanced at him then. "You don't talk much about yourself." He shifted slightly. "Not much to say." "I don't believe that." Her voice was gentle. "You see too much. You feel too much. That's not someone with nothing to say." He felt the walls tremble inside him. Before he could stop himself, he asked, "Why are you kind to me, Rose?" She looked up at him, surprised. "Why wouldn't I be? Most people here, they treat me like I don't exist." Her eyes softened, and she reached out, just briefly, touching his hand. "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible, and I never want anyone else to feel that way again." It shattered something in him. Back in her office, Rose sat down, heart strangely thudding. She hadn't planned to touch his hand, but something about the look in his eyes, so lonely, so painfully quiet, made her reach out. Who was this man? There was something about him that didn't fit. His words were too careful, his manners too refined, his eyes too intelligent. She'd known men with wealth who lacked half his grace. Cleaners didn't usually speak in layered silences or carry themselves like forgotten royalty. She pulled out her tablet and stared at it blankly. There was a mystery inside that uniform, and for the first time in a long while, Rose wanted to solve it. Later that evening, Vincent returned to the janitor's closet and found the paper bag, his name scribbled in neat cursive across the front. He opened it slowly. The scent of spiced egg sauce hit his nose, warm and familiar. Tucked beside the food was a small note. "You give more than you take. Don't think no one notices. R." He sat down on the bench inside the small supply room, his chest tight with something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Meanwhile, in her tiny apartment in Lecky, Rose stared at the ceiling. She couldn't stop thinking about the way Mr. Bello had looked at her when she touched his hand. Like no one had ever done that before. Or like it had been a very long time since someone had done it without expecting anything back. She had no idea who he really was. But in a city full of men with loud mouths and empty hearts, this man, the quiet cleaner with tired eyes, felt more real than anyone she'd met in years. Khalifa Towers, Monday morning, 10:05 a.m. The work week began like a well-oiled engine. Clean shoes on glossy floors, expensive perfume hanging in the air, and the cold confidence of Banana Island's elite filling every corridor of Khalifa Group holdings. But for Vincent Khalifa, hidden in the uniform of a janitor, the engine sounded like a ticking bomb. He hadn't stopped thinking about Rose's note, or the gentle touch of her hand, or the terrifying warmth that flooded him when she looked at him like he was human. Something was shifting inside him, and it was dangerous. Meanwhile, upstairs, Tunde Adewale, junior analyst and self-declared future CEO, adjusted his tie and swaggered toward the copy machine on the 5th floor. He was in the middle of filming a behind-the-scenes vlog for his secret YouTube channel, Corporate Conqueror Nija, when something odd caught his eye. The cleaner was back, but not just cleaning. He was standing still, staring at a framed photo of the company's board of directors hanging in the hallway. "Why's this mop boy always near executive things?" Tunde muttered aloud. He zoomed in on the cleaner's face with his phone camera, and then froze. He'd seen that face before, somewhere far away from janitorial duty. Later that day, Tunde stormed into the basement break room where the other junior staff ate in peace. He slapped his phone on the table and shoved it toward Chica, one of the IT interns. Bro, look at this guy. You recognize him? Chica peered at the screen, frowning. Looks familiar, show. Wait, is that not Vincent Khalifa himself? Tunde snapped his fingers. Yes, I knew it. That's the Oga himself. In cleaner uniform. Chica sat back, stunned. Why would a billionaire pretend to clean his own office? That's what I'm about to find out, Tunde said, smirking. And maybe, just maybe, it's time someone taught him not to play with people's heads. He hit record on his phone again. Back on the third floor, Rose had just stepped out of a meeting when she saw Mr. Bello wheeling a vacuum cart around the hallway bend. Their eyes met, and everything around her fell away. I saved you breakfast, she said with a soft smile. Same spot as last time. He looked different today. A little tense, a little quiet. Thank you, he said, voice rougher than usual. I don't take it for granted, Rose. She touched his arm gently. Neither do I. But across the building, trouble was brewing. Tunde uploaded a still shot from the video to his anonymous Instagram gossip page, captioning it, Billionaire CEO spotted cleaning floors at his own company, prank or psych experiment. He added fire emojis, tagged 2 gossip blogs, and clicked post. At exactly 4:42 p.m., Zainab Bello burst into Vincent's private flat in Ikuyi, phone in hand. Vincent, someone found out. He looked up from the notebook where he'd been journaling, eyes narrowing. Who? Some junior staff. Posted it online. It's spreading like wildfire. The board is calling an emergency meeting. You're trending on Twitter. Vincent leaned back, rubbing his temple. He had expected this, eventually, but not like this, not so soon. And Rose, he asked. Zainab's voice softened. Not tagged, not mentioned. But if this leaks further, Vincent stood. His heart was beating too fast, not from fear of exposure, but from fear of what Rose would think. She was the only person who treated him with care, not for what he could offer, but for who he seemed to be. And he hadn't told her the truth. That evening, Rose sat in her small living room, unwinding with a bowl of ogbono soup and plantain fufu when her phone buzzed with a notification. She almost ignored it, until she saw the name Vincent Khalifa. Confused, she opened the link. Her spoon dropped. There, plastered across the screen, was a blurry screenshot from an office hallway. Him, Mr. Bello. No, Vincent Khalifa, the billionaire CEO. No, it couldn't be. It had to be a lookalike, a clickbait prank. But then the article went on. Sources confirm the man seen cleaning floors at Khalifa Towers is indeed the elusive CEO, Vincent Khalifa. The reason behind this behavior remains unknown. Staff members are divided. Some claim it's a psychological experiment. Others say it's a publicity stunt. Rose sat frozen. Her mind raced back to his words. I used to work in wood and tech. Just trying to help. Why are you kind to me, Rose? None of it was casual. None of it was random. And all of it had been a lie. At that moment, a knock came at her door. Soft, familiar. Her heart leapt, then sank. She walked over and opened it. There he stood. No uniform, no cap, just Vincent Khalifa in a charcoal shirt and dark jeans, hands in his pockets, looking like a man who had lost his right to speak but needed to try anyway. Rose, he said. You lied to me, she whispered. He nodded. I did, and I hated it every time. But I needed to see if you could care about me without knowing who I was. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them away. I cared because you were kind, because you showed up when no one else did. And now I don't even know if that man was real. He is, Vincent said, stepping forward. He's me, the version of me I trust. Not the billionaire, not the brand, just Vincent. She looked at him, long and hard, then she stepped back. I need time. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. I'll wait. And then quietly, he walked away. Tuesday morning, 9:10 a.m. The sun was out over Banana Island, but inside her apartment, Rose Ez sat curled on the edge of her bed, still in her robe, the untouched mug of tea beside her growing cold. Sleep had been impossible. She had tossed and turned all night, Vincent's voice looping in her mind. He's me, the version of me I trust. Not the billionaire, not the brand, just Vincent. But it didn't make sense. How could someone so powerful, so untouchably wealthy, hide behind dusty sneakers and a mop just to chase sincerity? Why her? Why lie? She checked her phone again. 22 missed calls, all from her supervisor. Her sudden absence today was creating noise, no doubt, but Rose couldn't bring herself to return to that building. Not yet. Not with all eyes likely on her, whispering, "That's the girl who made the CEO fall in love while he was pretending to be a cleaner." The betrayal hurt. But the sincerity in his eyes last night, that's what made it worse. Across town, Vincent stood before a boardroom full of fire. Well, the 12 directors of Khalifa Group Holdings stared at him like he'd grown horns. "Do you know what you've done?" barked Chief Williams, a longtime investor with zero tolerance for theatrics. "You've humiliated this company." "Our reputation is not a toy, Vincent." Another board member, Ijoma Morty, folded her arms tightly. "This isn't some experiment in morality. We run a business. Investors are calling. Clients want answers. And the media thinks you've lost your mind." Vincent leaned on the long conference table and let them finish. When the room fell quiet, he finally spoke. "I built this company. I've given it 10 years of my life. What I chose to do these past weeks wasn't about the press. It was about truth." He paused. "I've been lied to, used, surrounded by people who smile for my wallet and frown at my silence. I needed to find out if genuine hearts still exist in this building. Not just employees, but humans." The silence returned. Then Chief Williams scoffed. "And did you find what you were looking for?" Vincent's voice dropped. "Yes, her name is Rose." By mid-afternoon, the internet had turned feral. Vincent's reveal had hit every major blog, gossip page, and business outlet in Nigeria. One video clip in particular was trending, an interview snippet from a past TEDx talk where Vincent once said, "If I ever want to know what people value in me, I'll take off my watch, my name, and my wealth, and walk among them." The comment section was chaos. This man's playing chess while others are playing checkers. Can someone check if he's okay? Is this a breakdown or a movie script? So, the billionaire turned janitor just to find love? I'm crying. And then someone leaked the name of the woman involved. Rose. Rose was jolted awake by her ringing phone. It was her cousin, shouting in excitement. "You're on Instablog, babe. They said you're the one who stole the CEO's heart. The mop man is the billionaire." Rose's heart sank. Her privacy, gone. She opened her feed and saw it, her image pulled from her tagged office photos, slapped next to Vincent Khalifa's face with a bold headline. "The Cleaner and the CEO, a real-life Nollywood fairy tale?" Beneath the image were hundreds of comments. "She must be special. He had all the women in Lagos and chose her. Smart girl. Played the long game. Hope it's not just a stunt." She felt nauseous. Her life was no longer hers. Vincent sat in the back seat of his SUV parked outside a small florist in Victoria Island. He had come here not for the flowers, but for the quiet. He scrolled through Rose's page. Her last post was from a week ago, a picture of her mother's jollof with the caption, "Some recipes hold memories." He knew better than to call again. He had said too much already. But still his fingers hovered over her contact. Then with a sudden surge of clarity, he opened notes on his phone and began to write. At 8:32 p.m., a delivery arrived at Rose's door. A small brown envelope. No label, no flowers. Just her name. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Rose, I told you I was hiding, but what I didn't say was that every moment with you felt like truth. When you smiled at me, it was the first time I didn't feel like a number on a Forbes list. When you asked how I was doing, I realized I hadn't asked myself that in years. You didn't fall for the billionaire. You found something in the quiet version of me, the one I lost somewhere between press conferences and mergers. I can't take back the lie, but I'll never stop telling the truth from this moment forward. If you choose to walk away, I'll respect it. But if you choose to stay, I promise you'll never walk alone again. Vincent. Rose clutched the letter to her chest, eyes brimming. She didn't know what tomorrow would hold. But for the first time since the reveal, she felt something crack open inside her. Forgiveness. Wednesday. Morning 8:57 a.m. Khalifa Towers. Rose's heels tapped lightly against the granite floors as she entered the building. Her steps were slower than usual, not out of hesitation, but preparation. The entire world knew her name now. Eyes followed her. Whispers followed faster. That's her. The janitor girl. No, she's the one he chose. She felt the heat of stares, the sharpness of envy, the weight of curiosity. But she kept walking, right? She wore a soft green blouse tucked into high-waisted black trousers. Minimal makeup, her curls pinned back, exposing her graceful neck. She walked like someone with nothing to prove and everything to protect. Inside, her heart thundered. She hadn't seen Vincent since the letter. She hadn't replied, but she'd read it 4 times. Upstairs, Vincent stood behind the floor-to-ceiling glass of his executive suite. His tailored gray suit clung to him like armor, his beard freshly trimmed. But his eyes searched for her. And then, there she was, moving through the crowd like still water in a storm. She came back. His heartbeat was calm for the first time in days. Now I have to earn her. Meanwhile, on the office floor, the staff buzzed with confusion. The news had thrown everything off balance. Meetings were canceled, gossip threads exploded, and everyone had a theory. Some insisted it was a long-game loyalty test. Others whispered it was a humiliation stunt gone rogue. Only a few, very few, understood what was truly happening. That the most powerful man in Lagos had stripped himself bare for love. 10 a.m. sharp. A message pinged across all employee systems. Mandatory staff gathering lounge floor. 10:15 a.m. Signed, Vincent Khalifa. The building pulsed with anticipation. No one knew what to expect. At 10:17 a.m., Vincent stepped onto the small platform in the staff lounge. He didn't hold notes, didn't wear a microphone. He just stood, tall, composed, and very human. He looked around the room at the faces who had once ignored him, mocked him, dismissed him. Then he spoke. Most of you know me as your CEO, the man behind the glass walls, the one who never speaks unless it's about profit margins or legal compliance. Pause. Deep breath. But for the past few weeks, I've walked these halls differently. Not as Vincent Khalifa, but as Mr. Bello, the cleaner. Why? Because I stopped trusting the world I helped build. I wanted to see the truth. I needed to know if kindness still existed when power was removed from the equation. And what I found was ugly, cruelty, entitlement, and indifference. But I also found grace. I found compassion. I found a woman who looked past my uniform and saw a man. Her name is Rose, and I owe her more than an apology. I owe her my truth. The room was silent. Some jaws dropped. Others looked at the floor in shame. Then Vincent turned slightly, his eyes finding her across the room. Rose, standing still, watching him. He stepped down from the platform and walked directly to her. Every step slowed the heartbeat of the room. When he reached her, he didn't reach for her hand. He didn't ask a question. He simply said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "If you still believe me, I'm right here." And then, silence, the kind that crushes. Rose looked up at him. For a heartbeat, her face was unreadable. Then, she nodded, once, and stepped forward. Their hands met in the middle of the room. Whispers faded into awe. Tunde choked on his coffee. Mirabelle looked like she might faint. But Vincent and Rose? They stood in the center of it all, two hearts who had found each other behind masks, walls, and noise. That night, under the stars on Vincent's private terrace in Banana Island, he poured Rose a glass of Zobo, not champagne. "No performances tonight," he said. She smiled. "Good. I like the quiet version of you." He laughed softly. "So do I." They didn't talk about press or gossip or the corporate circus. They talked about dreams, about building a foundation for women in tech, about soup recipes and travel, and about forgiveness, not just for each other, but for themselves. And when he kissed her, softly, reverently, it wasn't the kiss of a billionaire. It was the kiss of a man who had finally been seen. Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m., Banana Island. Rose stood at the edge of Vincent's private garden, barefoot, her arms folded loosely as she took in the view. The estate stretched beyond the white pebbled pathway into a manicured garden that looked like something out of a magazine. Quiet, breathtaking, almost unreal. It had been 3 days since she stepped into the building and stood beside him. 3 days since the world watched her become the girl who the billionaire chose. And everything had changed. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Invitations to morning talk shows. Feature requests from magazines. Bloggers digging through her past like vultures. Photos of her in secondary school uniforms. Her father's obituary post. And her tiny Lekki apartment shared across the internet like exhibits in a trial. Suddenly, her kindness had a price. Her love had become spectacle. Inside, Vincent sat in his study, scrolling through a new set of headlines. Rose Eze, Lagos modern-day Cinderella or master strategist. How the cleaner girl captured a billionaire's heart, true love or long con. Inside the life of the woman who changed Vincent Khalifa forever. He tossed the phone onto the desk. They'll never see her the way I do. There was a knock. Zainab stepped in, frowning. "We need to talk about the board again." Vincent sighed. "What now?" "They're demanding that you release an official statement about the relationship scandal. Some are even suggesting you step down as CEO temporarily to protect the company's reputation." His jaw clenched. "They'd rather I lie and pretend Rose doesn't exist just to save face." Zainab's voice softened. "You're not just a man anymore, Vincent. You're a brand, and they think the brand is slipping." Later that evening, Rose sat alone on the couch, scrolling through hateful DMs. Of course she's after his money. Let's see how long she lasts. You'll never be one of us. She had expected attention, but not this level of vitriol. Vincent entered, pausing when he saw her curled into the sofa, the glow of her phone painting sadness across her face. "You saw the comments," he said. She nodded. "They think I'm your downfall." He knelt in front of her. "They don't know you, and they don't know me, but I do." She met his eyes, trying to be brave. "This is more than I imagined. I didn't think loving you would come with all this." Vincent took her hand, pressed it to his chest. "Then let me carry the weight with you." The next morning, Friday, Vincent held a press conference. The media swarmed the Khalifa Group building, cameras rolling, lenses pointed, microphones ready to feed. He stepped onto the podium alone. No PR manager, no lawyer, no corporate filter. Just a man with truth in his hands. "There's no scandal here, no hidden agenda. I disguised myself to discover if real love could still find me, and it did. Her name is Rose Eze, and she didn't fall for a title. She fell for a man who scrubbed floors and emptied bins. This company has always stood for innovation, and now we're going to innovate the way we treat people, from boardroom to basement. Every employee, from the executive to the janitor, deserves respect. Starting today, Khalifa Group will be launching the Human First Initiative, a program that ensures dignity, upward mobility, and fair treatment for all staff members, no matter their role. This isn't about PR. This is personal. And to those who still believe love must come dressed in wealth and suits, Watch us redefine everything you thought you knew. The press room was stunned. Then a few hands clapped. Then more. Then thunderous applause. And somewhere behind the crowd, Rose stood watching, with tears in her eyes. That night they sat in silence under the stars again. He didn't say much. He just took her hand in his, kissed the back gently, and whispered, "I'd give up the world if it meant keeping you in it." Rose closed her eyes. "Then let's build a new one that sees hearts first." And in that quiet garden, far from the noise, they began. Saturday evening, Banana Island, 7:40 p.m. The sky was bruised with streaks of violet and deep rose as the sun lowered itself behind the Lagos Lagoon. The Khalifa estate was unusually quiet, the usual hum of security gates and garden sprinklers replaced by soft jazz playing in the open-air patio. Every inch of the compound shimmered in golden light, from the polished stone pathway to the cascading ivy trellis that led to the garden's heart. But tonight there were no reporters, no company drama, no whispers. Just Rose standing barefoot in the center of a private garden, wrapped in fairy lights and the soft scent of jasmine. She wore a simple emerald green gown that hugged her figure gently. Her curls were pinned loosely, a few tendrils brushing her collarbone. She wasn't dressed like the woman in the headlines. Tonight she was simply herself, raw, honest, beautifully unguarded. Vincent watched her from a few paces away, his breath caught in his chest. He'd seen her 1,000 ways, tired, laughing, angry, glowing under office lights. But this was the Rose that broke him open. And tonight he had something to give her. 2 days earlier, Vincent had called Zainab into his office with a quiet urgency. "I want it to be private. No cameras, no press. Just her. And truth." Zainab blinked. "You mean?" He nodded once. "I'm ready, but it has to be real. Simple. No extravagance. Just us." For a man who once bought a Bugatti out of boredom, this would be the most important, most vulnerable purchase of his life. Back in the garden, Rose turned slowly to face him, her eyes glinting with candlelight. "You planned all this?" Vincent nodded, his heart beating louder than any jazz. "I planned 100 things for us, but they all seemed too loud, too fake, too far from who we are now." She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then what did you choose instead?" He took a breath. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Wooden, hand-carved, unpolished. It looked nothing like a billionaire's choice, but it was everything he wanted it to be. Inside was a ring, a thin gold band with a single sapphire stone, deep blue like the ocean she once told him she dreamed of seeing. Around the edges, tiny Nsibidi symbols were etched, old Igbo love markings, symbols of eternal promise. Vincent dropped to one knee, not with a speech, not with a crowd, but with his heart in his palm. "I spent most of my life being the man everyone expected me to be. Powerful, perfect, silent. But then you looked at me without expectation, and I felt human again. You didn't fall in love with the billionaire. You saw the broken parts, the real parts, the cleaner. And if I had to start again from the ground up, with a mop and a small flat in Ikea, I'd still ask you the same thing. Roses, will you marry me?" She didn't speak right away. Tears welled in her eyes, not from surprise, but from the weight of everything they'd overcome. The lies, the shame, the whispers. And yet here they were, together. She knelt with him, pressed her forehead to his. Yes. And it wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. It was whispered like a prayer, honest and full. Later, as they lay on the grass side by side, her head on his shoulder, Vincent traced lazy circles on her hand with his thumb. "The world's going to lose its mind when they find out," she murmured. He chuckled. "Let them. We'll be too busy building ours." She shifted closer. "Does this mean I'm officially part of your empire now?" "Oh," he smiled. "No, it means I'm finally part of yours." 6 weeks later. Victoria Island, Lagos. The sun rose slow and soft over the coast, bathing the sky in hues of apricot and blush. It was a perfect morning, quiet, reverent, the kind of morning the city rarely gave freely. But today was not just any day. Today, Rose Isa would marry Vincent Khalifa, and the world would watch. Not from a press pit, not from a helicopter drone, but from behind a distant veil, because the ceremony was private, intimate, sacred. Just 30 guests, no paparazzi, no hashtags, just hearts. The venue was the Khalifa Beach Villa, a secluded coastal estate tucked behind rows of palms and ivory dunes. A string quartet played soft Yoruba folk melodies, and white rose petals lined the sand down to an altar made of driftwood and silk. Rose walked barefoot down the aisle. Her gown was ivory satin with cap sleeves, soft and flowing, no corset, no diamond overload. Her curls were loose, pinned with baby's breath and pearls. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers from her late mother's garden, flowers that had survived long before she ever knew love like this. Vincent stood waiting, dressed in a traditional white senator suit with sapphire embroidery across the chest. His mother, regal and beaming, stood beside him, tears caught in her lashes. When Rose reached him, Vincent didn't speak. He just took her hands, kissed each palm, and breathed. Finally, the vows were whispered, not meant for ears beyond their own. They didn't speak of forever in fairy tale words. They spoke of choice, of days when loving would be easy, and days it wouldn't, of loyalty, of truth, of never hiding again. When the officiant said, "You may now kiss the bride," Vincent didn't just kiss her. He pulled her close like she was the last piece of a broken puzzle he'd spent his whole life searching for. And she kissed him back with every version of herself. Broken, beautiful, brave. 3 days later, Khalifa Towers. The company buzzed with a different energy. The HR policies had changed. The janitorial staff now received full health benefits and upward career opportunities. Vincent had made sure of it. But the real change? It was in how people greeted each other. With eye contact, with dignity, with pause. The human-first initiative had taken root. And at the heart of it all stood a new nameplate outside the CEO's wing. Rosa Isa Khalifa, Executive Director, Employee Wellness Culture. 1 week later, public announcement, Vincent and Rose made a quiet appearance at Lagos Charity Gala for underprivileged girls in STEM fields. Rose spoke first. Her voice shook at first, but then grew steadier, stronger. She told them her story, not as the woman who married a billionaire, but as a girl who once sat at a bus stop in Yaba, eating puff puff and dreaming of something more. And then she looked out at the crowd and said, "Being seen doesn't start with power. It starts with presence. It starts with choosing to look, not through someone, but into them." And in the months that followed, they traveled quietly. They built a school in Makoko. They launched a mentorship program for women who had been overlooked. And every night, before the world returned with its noise, they sat on their balcony with a blanket, a glass of Zobo, and the quiet promise that had built their love. No more masks, just us. 2 years later, the late afternoon sun hung low over the Lagos Lagoon, casting a golden shimmer across the surface. Inside the sprawling Khalifa residence, laughter echoed down the marble hallways. Soft, warm, and unmistakably real. Rose Isa Khalifa stood in the open-plan kitchen barefoot, wearing a flowing cream caftan with gold embroidery. Her hands moved gracefully as she chopped garden tomatoes and fresh scent leaves for ogbono soup, the aroma filling the house with comfort. Behind her, soft giggles erupted. "No, no, my love, don't feed Daddy your biscuit," she called out without turning. Vincent Khalifa, in a plain black t-shirt and joggers, was lying on the rug, his 2-year-old son Zion sitting triumphantly on his chest holding a soggy, half-eaten cracker. Vincent let out a dramatic groan. "He's trying to bribe me into watching cartoons instead of the news again." Rose chuckled, wiped her hands on a napkin, and walked over. "That's because he knows soft hearts run this house." Vincent sat up, Zion now nestled between them. He looked at Rose with eyes that still glowed like the first day she touched his hand in that hallway. They were no longer headlines. They were home. Since their marriage, the world had adjusted. The noise dulled. The spotlight softened. But their mission had only grown louder. Under Rose's leadership, the Human First Initiative became more than a corporate policy. It became a movement. Other Nigerian companies adopted their model. Wellness retreats were sponsored for mid-level workers. Rose hosted monthly roundtables for domestic staff rights. Her voice, once quiet in staff lounges, now rang through conference halls across Africa. Vincent stepped back from day-to-day CEO duties, appointing a young female CFO and pushing for inclusive hiring practices. He focused on building foundations in low-income communities, creating scholarships, rural tech hubs, and vocational training schools. They didn't just change policies, they changed perspectives. In the evenings after the work was done, they retreated to their favorite ritual, dinner under the stars with jazz playing in the background and Zion asleep nearby. One night as they sipped zobo under a soft blanket and watched the moon rise, Rose whispered, "I used to think love had to come with fire and noise, but you taught me it comes with stillness." Vincent turned to her. "You taught me it comes with bravery." 1 month later, at the Zion Khalifa Foundation launch, cameras clicked. Guests from across West Africa gathered at the Echo Hotel ballroom. Vincent took the stage, but this time, it wasn't about business or profits. He spoke about his time in disguise, about discovering that the richest thing he ever did was fall in love with a woman who saw past what the world worshipped. Then he turned the mic to Rose, who walked up in a silk navy gown, her son clapping in the front row with Zainab beside him. Rose looked out at the crowd and said, "Power didn't save me, neither did wealth. What saved me was one act of kindness. A mop in a hallway, a pair of tired eyes, and a man who asked nothing but gave everything. If we want to change Nigeria, we start with how we treat each other, especially when no one is watching." The room erupted in applause. But Vincent only looked at her, heart full, knowing this was the legacy they were building. Not just a love story, but a blueprint. 10 years later, somewhere in Ghana, an older couple walked hand in hand through a quiet beach town. No security, no flashbulbs, just peace. Their now teenage son ran ahead to chase waves. Locals greeted them without fuss. They were no longer Vincent Khalifa the billionaire and Rose the receptionist turned executive. They were simply Vincent and Rose, two souls who had rewritten their fate not through perfection, but through intention. He kissed her hand. She smiled. And they kept walking, one step, one choice, one act of love at a time. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.